Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Flop Warning, a college basketball podcast. I'm your host for today, Cole Nobby, joined by Luke Donovan, Elias Corey. We are down to the final four teams in the country of March Madness. Let's get right into it. Luke, what were your immediate reactions this past weekend of games?
UConn showed once again that they are the tried and true team to beat. That second half against Illinois was, I think, the most dominant half of basketball we've seen all season. And every game we wonder, are they finally going to get tripped up? Are they going to cover these ridiculous spreads that they've had? And every single game, UConn answers with a blowout victory. And this one against Illinois was very impressive.
And if you're Illinois for Brad Underwood, you have to question yourself going back on that game going, okay, instead of spreading it out and drawing Clingan from the basket, we just decided to play one-on-one with Ty Rodgers going against Donovan Clingan. Let's not give Terrence Shannon the ball. Let's just clear it out and let Ty Rodgers go one-on-one with a great defender. I didn't love that for Illinois. I thought Illinois had a chance, really, before that game started. Elias, what were you feeling this weekend?
Well, I feel a little bit slighted when you say that there are only four teams remaining in college basketball because there's 8. I mean, let's not forget NIT Final Four is still going on, and that's where really you're going to see the best basketball. But no, I'll be honest, the Sweet 16 Elite 8 were really disappointing for me and for my bracket for the most part. I made 36. I believe 2 of them have teams remaining still, and so
Teams in general.
Okay. I have gotten every Sweet 16 matchup wrong in all of my good brackets. I really like what I've seen from NC State in the last couple of rounds. You know, people keep saying, well, I don't know if NC State is good enough to beat Purdue. And, you know, Purdue's got an easy road to the Final Four at this point. But people didn't think NC State was going to beat Marquette. They didn't think NC State was going to beat North Carolina in the ACC chip. They didn't think they were going to beat even Texas Tech. They thought that was going to be the Red Raiders game. They didn't think they were going to beat Duke. So people keep asking, well, you know, NC State's not good enough to do this. They keep showing that they're good enough to do it right now. Maybe they couldn't get it done in, you know, November, December, January, February even. But they're one of the best teams in the country in the last couple of weeks. And so I'm excited to watch the Wolfpack against Shrek this coming weekend.
I do agree. I don't think there's really any thought that or prediction that Purdue loses. But the more I didn't think NC State was going to beat Marquette. I thought that was going to be a wash of a game. And I don't know if Marquette got within 5 the entire second half. We'll head to our first segment, the game ball segment. Luke, I'll start with you. 1 for the Sweet 16, 1 for the Elite 8. Start with Sweet 16. Who is your game ball going to?
Game ball from the Sweet 16 stays with the Wolfpack. DJ Horne, we knew he would have to play a big game to keep up with those Marquette guards, and he absolutely did. He had 19 points, 4 of 7 from 3, 5 boards. Couldn't say enough about his poise under pressure, and he was right there along with Tyler Kolek and Cam Jones for Marquette as one of the best guards on the floor in that game.
I agree. Yeah, DJ Horne has been great. Everyone's been talking about DJ Burns, but the guards from NC State, have been great. Mine for the Sweet 16, I have Grant Nelson for that Alabama game over UNC. UNC controlled that game most of the way, but for Grant Nelson to be playing a bigger, stronger Armando Bacot and go for 24, 12, and 5, they win by 2. North Carolina kind of choked that one away. It wasn't necessarily Alabama grabbing it from them. But, yeah, crazy win. Elias, who do you got for your Sweet 16 game ball?
I mean, for me, it's just got to be Mark Sears on the other side of that Alabama team. And I guess that's maybe more of an Elite 8 pick than a Sweet 16 because he really popped off against Clemson. But, I mean, Mark Sears has essentially beat one of the coolest little curses in March Madness, a team who is ranked in the top 10 in offensive efficiency and outside the top 100 in defensive efficiency has never made it past the first weekend. And here Alabama is in the Final Four. It's just a really cool thing to see what Nate Oates has really done with this team because, I mean, they couldn't defend me. Let alone teams like Clemson and North Carolina. And Mark Sears and you're right, Grant Nelson have just really stepped up offensively in this tournament. Like you said, Grant Nelson, as he started in JUCO, right? Is that Grant Nelson started in JUCO? Somebody on their team started in JUCO. And going toe-to-toe with 38-year-old Armando Bacot is pretty impressive. But, yeah, Mark Sears lighting it up from downtown. been a cool thing to watch.
And Grant Nelson, his performance, he really had to step up in that game, especially if you look at Alabama's first two rounds. He only had 3 points apiece in each of those contests. And we knew against North Carolina with guys like Bacot, Grant Nelson was going to have to play a lot better than he did in those first 2 rounds. And he delivered. And that's the biggest reason why Bama is where they are today.
And he did start with North Dakota State. He played 3 seasons for North Dakota State. And yeah, there's a lot of ties actually in the Alabama-UConn game between Dan Hurley and Nate Oates. There's actually a bunch of interesting stuff there. We'll move on to the Elite Eight. I'll start with you, Elias. Who was your Elite Eight game ball?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit differently from what I think you guys are going to do. I'm going to say the officials in the Purdue Tennessee game, they really brought their A game. Granted, Zach Edey 22 free throws and Tennessee shot 11. Obviously, Zach Edey's going to shoot a lot of free throws. He's massive and very difficult to stop. But 22 to 11 seems like kind of a ridiculous ratio. I mean, Purdue as a whole shot 33. That's 3 times as many free throws as Tennessee. If those numbers are even remotely similar, Tennessee wins that game in what I don't think is particularly close fashion. So, yeah, the refs really, they showed up to get us this Purdue matchup with a double-digit seed in the Final Four.
And I think that's the interesting thing is I don't think people are saying that Zach Edey doesn't get fouled because he's 7'4". He's probably getting hung on, pushed in the back every play. It's the fact that that game was so physical and so crazy under the rim, and he didn't have a single foul until there was 14 minutes left in the second half. That's just not possible for a guy who's constantly playing down low. Luke, who is your Elite Eight game ball?
I'm going to go to the other side of it. As much as Zach Edey is a free throw merchant, don't connect. I mean, how about his performance? He was absolutely electric. One of the most fun players to watch all season. 37 points, 6 threes, 50% from the perimeter. I'm so excited to see what he does in the league. I think he could go to the Spurs and him and Wemby team up, and that would be very exciting in San Antonio. But Dalton Knecht deserves all the flowers for this run that Tennessee made and just an incredible performance to match up with Edey and almost outplay him. But
yeah, if he had any help at all, Tennessee should have won that game. We already talked about it. Mine's Donovan Clingan. He had 22, 10, 5, and 3 in just 22 minutes on the floor. He only shot the ball 13 times, had 22 points. When he was on the floor, it seemed like Illinois was just not getting a shot up around the rim. They just had no offense when he was anywhere on the floor. And he was really the catalyst of that 30-0 run, which is just outrageous. We'll move on to our next segment. We talked about a little bit our favorite storylines going into the Final Four. Elias, what are you looking most forward to going into this weekend?
Well, I see that Luke and I have really similar answers, so I don't want to spoil his. But I'm really excited. I talked about it last week to see Purdue face another double-digit seed. I mean, because they've shown that they're a relatively stout team when it comes to playing, solid teams. But now they're getting matched up with maybe the best double-digit team that we've seen in the tournament. I mean, definitely if they've made it to the Final Four, they're very good. But I think people are really sleeping on the Wolfpack right now. And the matchup between Edey and DJ Burns is one that, I mean, the country's going to be watching. This is, I mean, the 2 biggest guys in college basketball in their own respect. Also saw a picture of DJ Burns when he started his career at Tennessee. Guy was in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he was not anywhere near as big as he is now.
No, and not that he's in bad shape now. I mean, he played 42 minutes in their round of 32 game. But no, I think you guys remember those pictures of Taco Fall getting guarded by that big high school kid? That's what I imagine the matchup will be. And Taco Fall wasn't super talented either, similar to Edey. So I'm excited to see what DJ Burns is able to do in the post against Zach Edey. Obviously, his vertical is probably similar to mine. But I don't know. That could be interesting. If Burns gets in foul trouble early, I think Purdue should run away with that one. But it'll be an interesting matchup to see Purdue with another double digit because they really lose to a lot of double digit seeds.
I actually think NC State's just going to flat out double. I don't think they're going to let DJ Burns go one-on-one. I think NC State, it's going to be all pressure on the guards if they can get steals, if Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer can guard. I mean, absolutely. Like run up and down, get that game out of hand, which is what Tennessee tried to do a little bit, but couldn't really get it up and down.
I think it's Mohamed Diarra for the Wolfpack, who's going to be the main guy on Zach Edey. He's the leading rebounder on the team. DJ Burns, if he gets in foul trouble, this Wolfpack team is not the same offensively. So I think you keep him on Kaufman-Renn, or you maybe try and put him on Gillis when Gillis is in the game. But if Burns gets in foul trouble, it's going to be very tough for the Wolfpack. So I think Diarra is the key player to watch for the Wolfpack when it comes to defense on Edey. But the key, I just want to see one team play Purdue and try, and I know it's harder than it is to say, but just don't foul. Don't foul. At least in the first half, Edey's going to have his points. If Edey is that deep in the paint, he's going to get the 2. Don't let him get the 3. Don't let him get to the line 12 times in the first half and put yourself behind on fouls.
And I think we're all kind of hoping that the possibility of Klingon versus Edey comes up. That's what I have as my favorite storyline. Everybody wants to see UConn versus Purdue. Those two match up. Everyone wants to see this. I mean, it's been the two best teams all year. Houston came on late and grabbed that 1 seed, but nobody ever thought that UConn or Purdue wasn't the two best teams all year. So that's what I'm really hoping, we just get the two best teams and we finalize it. All right. Segment number 4, we're going to our viewers, one of their favorite segments, the flop of the week. Luke, I'll start with you. Who is your flop of the Sweet 16 or Elite 8?
Got to go to the Sweet 16, and I got to go to Caleb Love. I mean, just absolute terrible night from the man against Clemson. I think he's the reason they lost the game. I mean, if he plays, I don't even want to say, he doesn't even have to play an A-tier game for Caleb Love. If he is average or slightly worse than average, Arizona probably wins that one, but 0 for 9 from the 3-point line, 3 turnovers. He took 18 shots and only had 13 points. That's how you lose in the Elite 8. None of these teams are that bad where you can shoot that terribly and expect to win games when you're your team's best player.
I chalked Arizona as winning that game. I did not think Clemson could keep up with them until I saw Caleb Love come off that screen with probably 5 seconds left on the shot clock and shoot a 1-footed floater practically that just barely nipped the rim. I was like, yeah, Clemson might handle this game. I mean, how 0 for 9 from 3? And then RJ Davis does the same thing on the other way around. I didn't know if that's where you were going, but RJ Davis does the exact same thing against Alabama. That's not where you want to be. Elias, who is your flop of the week?
Well, I'm not going to say RJ because North Carolina wouldn't have been in that position without RJ. I think Cormac Ryan illustrated that really well in their post-game presser. I'm actually really excited for this flop because I've been waiting for these guys to have a bad game. I got to go with 2 different Duke Blue Devils. I've got to go with Tyrese Proctor, and I've got to go with Kyle Filipowski. Because, I mean, for the 2 of those guys to combine for 11 points, of course, all of those came from Filipowski. Granted, 5 were at the free throw line. I mean, they combined for just 3 of 13 from the field. And, I mean, these are 2 of your leaders on that Duke roster. Tyrese Proctor, going to be the 3rd Tyrese to ever play in the NBA, by the way. If he does get drafted, the only 2 ever have been.
Is he getting drafted?
He might get drafted. I mean, people were really excited about him coming into this year, making a big jump. I mean, he's played semi-professionally overseas in Australia. Yeah. Really, he's just got to have a better game, and they definitely could have beaten this NC State team. NC State really didn't have a big chance of winning until we came down the stretch with about 8-7 minutes left in that second half. Yeah, really just kind of crapped the bed for those guys. And I'm not going to say I'm happy to see it, but like I am, because like realistically, Kyle Filipowski has been a villain to college basketball this year. And it is sad that we've probably seen the last of a Duke Jared McCain after his really cool stretch of basketball for Duke this year. Really came into his own this tournament. I mean, he had 32 in the loss, 3 of 9 from 3, made all 11 of his free throws, which is really tough to do when the pressure's on in March. But yeah, Tyrese Proctor, Kyle Filipowski, even Mark Mitchell, these guys just did not get it done for the Blue Devils this weekend.
And Filipowski has no excuse considering he's a first rounder.
Yeah.
So absolutely no excuse. But actually, I think Duke players might be inclined to stay a little bit with Cooper Flagg coming in.
Oh my gosh.
With Cooper Flagg coming in, people might be like, you know what? I'll stick around another year on the cusp of maybe we get a 1 seed. Maybe, we make a better run than we did this year.
I mean, granted, I shouldn't be totally negative about Filipowski. He's coming off a really horrific injury when he assaulted that fan. So, I mean, you can't really blame him. When you kick a guy that hard, it's really miraculous that he was back on the court.
give the Wolfpack defense some credit. I mean, they have held every single opponent so far this tournament under 70 points besides Oakland, and that game went to overtime. So that defense is cooking. We'll see how they can do against Purdue, obviously, a bit of a tougher matchup with the player of the year. But as much as some Duke players had off nights, the Wolfpack defense, they're rolling.
And on that note, my flop of the week is Marquette. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but Tyler Kolek was getting in the lane, drawing 2, drawing 3 every possession, and they just could not hit a 3. They were 4 for 31 from 3. Now, NC State, they've been playing good defense, but 4 for 31, and a lot of those were open. I mean, they were not like step back contested shots at the end of the shot clock. They were open corner threes. They had a relatively easy path to the final, really. If they could have beaten NC State, they would have played Duke with Houston going down with Jamal Shedd's injury. And then it's starting to look a little bit for Shaka Smart like he's not built for this. I mean, it was with Wichita State, it seemed like he was, but now with Texas and Marquette, he hasn't really put anything together in the tournament. He might have been a mid-major fluke, might have been an upset fluke guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it. 4 for 30. I mean, Dave Joplin for Marquette, one of their better shooters, was 0 for 7. I mean, I talked about it with Caleb Love earlier, RJ Davis as well. That's how you lose games. I mean, the three-pointer is so important in college basketball now that if you go 4 for 31, you're going to get beat.
On to Elias's favorite segment. We're on the NIT subject. We're talking about the NIT Final Four, which is tomorrow. First game is Indiana State versus Utah. Who do you guys like? I know who Elias likes.
I mean, it's got to be the Sycamores until it isn't. They should be the favorite remaining in the NIT. This is not one of the best teams in the NIT. This is not one of the best teams in mid-major basketball. This is one of the best teams in the country. And it's really disappointing that we didn't get to watch this team in March, because I firmly believe they're a Sweet 16 team. If they had been, given the right path, I think they definitely could have made some noise, because we look at what Alabama's doing right now. Like, teams just need offense in March. Obviously, people say defense wins championships. Not anymore. You need a hefty combination, and if something is going to take you far, if one of yours is going to be bad, your offense or your defense, you'd much rather have a bad defense and a good offense. And Indiana State has arguably the most efficient offense in the nation right now. Effective field goal percentage, number 1. 2-point percentage, number 1. Free throw percentage, number 2. 3-point percentage, 11. And 3-point percentage being at 11, incredibly high, considering they also take the 6th most threes in the country. Point distribution, about 40% of their points come from beyond the 3-point line. Ridiculous number. And I mean, they've got 4 guys in the top 35 in the nation in true shooting percentage in a pool of about 1,300. That's ridiculous. They're a really fun team to watch. They score 1 through 5, and they really should take care of business in the NIT.
But when you shoot that many threes, you lose to teams like Southern Illinois, and then you don't make the tournament when you miss those threes. But hey, I think they're going to win it too. I think they can beat Utah, but Georgia, for me, they've been very impressive this tournament down the stretch in close games. They just beat Ohio State, who I felt like Ohio State really cared about the NIT. They're going to have a pretty similar team. They just re-signed Diebler there to be their coach, and I thought they cared about it. And for Georgia to win that game 79-77 was good. Noah Thomason has been awesome. He averaged just 13 points during the regular season in his last 2 games. He's had 40 combined between those two. And I think Georgia's a team to look out for. I think they can certainly beat Seton Hall, but I agree with Elias. I think it is Indiana State's to take down.
And I agree with that. I think the NIT is mostly about who cares. And for me, I didn't think Seton Hall would care. Like, why? I mean, they just missed out on the tournament. A lot of people thought they should have gotten in. I didn't see why they would really want to play hard. And now here they're in the Final Four. It's funny because this is a Seton Hall team that beat UConn. 3 teams beat UConn this year. Creighton, Seton Hall, and Kansas. And so I can't believe that Seton Hall is sitting in the NIT semifinals right now, and we're talking about UConn just running through the entire NCAA tournament. But I agree with you guys. I really like Indiana State. I mean, this is a team that's just overshot expectations the entire year. Everyone thought they would be decent, and they've completely eclipsed that. I wish they were in the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure how far they would go, but I wish they were in the NCAA tournament.
I mean, really well coached too. Josh Schertz he's got a masterful offense there in Terre Haute Like just watch. Do yourself a favor, fans of the Flop Warning, all two of you. Do yourself a favor and watch some Indiana State basketball. It's how Naismith intended it.
So we are on to our segment number 6. We've already talked about it a little bit, but we need some exact predictions. We need some I will put the clown nose on next episode if this isn't correct predictions. Who do you guys got going to the final? Who do you guys got winning it all?
I'll put the clown nose on if it's not UConn and Purdue. And I took a bet today, put some money on it. UConn -9.5, Purdue -9.5. It was like plus a little over 200 or something. So I don't think either of these games are close. I think everybody's going to get the matchup they've been waiting for: Clinton versus Edey, UConn, Purdue, and great run for NC State, but I just don't think they're tall enough. It's a bad matchup for them. And Alabama, I think the lack of defense is going to haunt them in this one as well. So, double-digit wins in both the Final Four games. That's my take.
I think Alabama has less of a chance than NC State does, really. I just think because Alabama is going into it, they're not surprising anybody with how they play and what they do. And I think UConn is just going to run them out of the gym by 20 probably. I think NC State has a little bit of a chance, little bit of a Hail Mary chance on the idea that Purdue gets a little too cocky. They get a little too locked into, we need to get ready to play UConn on Monday. And they kind of forget about how good, DJ Horn and that offense can be shooting shots. But I'm going to be really disappointed, though, if NC State wins and we get to watch UConn beat NC State by 47 points in the national championship, just like last year.
I think, I don't know. I think it'd be foolish to say that, that Alabama doesn't have a shot against UConn or that NC State doesn't have a chance against Purdue, because what these one seeds, like Cole said, are at the risk of doing is having a look ahead game where UConn's thinking, oh gosh, we got to play Purdue. We got to match up with Zach Edey, or Purdue's thinking, we got to match up with Kling Kong over there in UConn. And they're not focusing on the matchup ahead of them. I mean, Zach Edey in his post-game interview to say that he's been the underdog after attending IMG and winning back-to-back National Player of the Years. Nobody's underrating you anymore, Zach. That was just, that's a horrible take. That's somebody trying to drum up villain like accolades for himself. He wants, the spotlight to be on him as, this guy's an underdog. He's beating the odds. No, you're 7'4". You should be a good basketball player. You should be much better than you are. So I definitely think being a little cocky is gonna get to the Boilers. We've seen a lot of that from Fletcher Lawyer this tournament, saying how, people are underrating the Purdue guards. The Purdue guards everybody knows they've performed exceptionally well this year. Braden Smith was a finalist for the Bob Cousy Award, wasn't he? Nobody's underrating this team. That was horrendous. But the likes of the Wolfpack and the Crimson Tide, they've got to the Final Four for a reason, because they've beaten teams that nobody expected them to beat. I think it'd be foolish to say, we're 100% going to get UConn, Purdue. I think Alabama's definitely got a good shot against UConn. If they shoot how they can, they really might win that game. Of course, UConn has made a season out of preventing teams from shooting how they can. No, I'm excited for NC State, Purdue. I think NC State wins because they're a double-digit seed, and we know Matt Painter struggles to coach against those kind of teams.
I do agree. Purdue fans, take this moment. It was a great run of the Final Four. This is probably your best team ever. You haven't been in forever. And we're sitting in an IU studio. We're going to be a little bit biased, but I did not like how Zach Edey got up there and was like, we're winners. All we do is win and stuff. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. This is right when they're showing up the graphic. It's the first time you've been to a Final Four in 100 years. And you're talking about how much you win and how much you never get upset and people doubted you. It's like, okay, people doubted you because you just lost to the worst team in the tournament last year.
Worst team in the tournament ever. The worst team to ever make an NCAA tournament. By the way, the shortest team in the field last year they lost to. And something that makes me so mad is to hear a Purdue fan tell an IU fan that their banners are getting dusty, right? Because at least we have a banner to get dust on, right? They're saying, oh, well, these banners you won before you were ever born. When was your last Final Four? The last time that Purdue was in a Final Four, people who were born that year are old enough to have like 20-year-old children now. Okay, so I don't know, just something that's something to watch. Watching Twitter and Facebook comment sections, those spheres, it's a really interesting battle to watch between an IU fan and a Purdue fan, because obviously one team is much better than the other now, but only one of those teams is going to lose to a double-digit seed this week.
I think this Purdue team's probably just as good as any IU team you could think of, though. Maybe the undefeated team back in the day, but I mean, this Purdue team outside of UConn, I mean, it's a clear 1-2, and as much as they love to play into the villain narrative, I think NC State, they got to have all the confidence in the world. They haven't lost in so long. They're on this streak. They should be so confident in themselves. Zach Edey, who throw that out, they got to take this game to Purdue, put the pressure on Fletcher Lawyer, on Braden Smith, on Lance Jones. If you make it a game about Zach Edey, you're not going to win. I think Tennessee settled into that a little too much. I would have loved to see Tennessee bring more pressure, and I hope NC State does that in this matchup because they're going to have to if they want to compete. They're just too small.
Yeah. Honestly, they need to treat Zach Edey like every women's basketball team treats Iowa. Right, you can let Caitlin Clark score 40. You can let Zach Edey score 40 if you hone in on the guys at the perimeter, because they have some of the best three-point shooters in the nation. Mason Gillis led the country in three-point percentage for a bit there. Now Braden Smith, I think, is in the top 20.
I'm pretty sure Gillis is still ahead. Gillis
was
like,
almost at 50%.
He's at like 48 and a half.
Crazy. So if you can really hone in on their shooters, let Zach Edey score as many as he wants. Keep your guys out of foul trouble so that you can stay and really lock down that perimeter. NC State's got a really interesting path, I think, to beating this Purdue team.
And yet that's why I think NC State has a better chance in Alabama, because there is no pressure on them at all. If they lose by 30, everyone's going to say, oh, well, you ran into the 1 seed and you lost by 30. They're just going to be out there playing. And so you think if those guards can get up in Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer a little bit, cause some turnovers, keep the game up and down away from just Edey planting himself in the paint, I think they have a puncher's chance. I think they have a little bit of chance.
People also get so wrapped up in seeds at this time of year, like, oh, well, we've got a 1 seed and we've got a 4 seed, so the 1 seed's probably going to win that. We've got a 1 seed and an 11 seed, so the 1 seed's probably going to win that. People thought the same thing about the 11-2, or people thought the same thing about Oakland, Kentucky. Upsets happen, and it's not about who was good leading up to March. It's about who's best right now, and I don't know that there's a team other than UConn playing better basketball than the Wolfpack right now.
So we're all set, though. We're all set on – we do believe a little bit in NC State. We don't believe there's any chance that Alabama beats UConn.
Alabama's got a shot, but it's a long one.
If Rylan Griffin makes like 5 threes and Mark Sears plays above expectation and Donovan Clingan fouls out, maybe. I don't know. I just think the UConn guards are going to be able to stifle Mark Sears a little bit, and it's going to be up to guys like Rylan Griffin, like Grant Nelson, to just play out of their minds. Like, if Grant Nelson goes for 25 and Rylan Griffin hits a couple of threes and Aaron Estrada's playing well, then you got a chance. But I think for UConn, they're going to be focused on number one, and he's not going to be able to go for 30 and keep them in the game. It's going to be up to the rest of the team who's less proven.
Yeah, I think Alabama's similar in the same way that they're going to have to just disregard Clingan and just shoot threes, run up and down, try to do something. But with UConn, that's extremely hard because of how good they are. So let's just look ahead to, say UConn and Purdue are matching up on Monday. What are you guys feeling in that game? I assume we're all taking UConn to win because that's what the odds-on favorite would be. How could Purdue win that game?
If Zach Edey, and I'm not even saying this as a joke. I know I joke about Purdue a lot, but really I think free throw disparity is going to be a huge part of that game because, I mean, UConn and Purdue both shoot free throws very well from the charity stripe. They're shooting, above average for the country, I think. But something that comes with shooting a lot of free throws is getting guys in foul trouble. And so if Edey's taking a lot of free throws, you would presume that means that Donovan Clingan is going to have to sit with foul trouble. And I don't know that backup over there at UConn, his name is slipping my mind right now. Who's the UConn backup center?
Samson Johnson.
Samson Johnson. Thanks, Josh.
It almost hit his head on the rim the other night. Did you guys see that? He had to duck out of the way on that back door.
But I don't know that Samson Johnson is going to be able to keep pace with Zach Edey. So really keep an eye on free throw disparity because that's going to determine who's on the court. And if Clingan or Edey is off the court, I think the opposing team could run away with it.
I think it'll be a real travesty if Donovan Clingan picks up 2 early fouls in the national championship game against Purdue. I think as much as Edey's going to draw his fouls, and I know he gets fouled more than everybody else. I'm not trying to argue that at all. But Donovan Clingan does have the height to match up with Edey and bang him around. And we've seen how physical this tournament has been. If there are some questionable calls, it's going to be really sad if the foul trouble dominates the narrative on the game. And I think there is a very high % chance that happens.
Yeah, that was kind of my take earlier in the year when everyone was looking at who's the best team in the country, Purdue or UConn. I thought, UConn is the one team who doesn't really have to put all their chips on Edey. They can say, Clingan, match up, play behind, play one-on-one, and then it comes down to who's going to shoot better, who's going to get to the rim better. And I trust Newton, I trust Caravan, I trust Cam Spencer a lot more than I trust guys like Lawyer and Jones, who have had games this year, just like Tennessee. They shot, 3 for 19 from 3 against Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, they were like 1 for 11 at halftime. And that's the formula to beat Purdue. You slow down Edey by 20% and don't let anybody else have a good game. And I think UConn, they can do that. Their guards are better than Purdue's guards. I mean, Tristan Newton's an NBA guy. He can do it all. He's going to be all up in Braden Smith's grill in that matchup. Cam Spencer is the best shooter on the floor in that matchup. So if Donovan Clingan can stay out of foul trouble, slow down Zach Edey, and probably play more minutes than he normally does, it's going to be tough for Purdue. But, I mean, if Zach Edey gets 2 quick fouls on Clingan, it's going to be more of the same from what we've seen from Purdue, where it's just Edey, kick out 3, Purdue pulls it out at the end.
I'll tell you what, though, speaking of guard play, how different of a Final Four might this look? And how differently might we be talking about the matchups had Jamal Shead not got injured against Duke? I mean, that very well could have been Houston's game. And as much as I've been, in NC State's corner the last couple of weeks, I feel like Houston wins that matchup with NC State way more often than Duke does. And we could be talking about 3 1 seeds in the Final Four and then Alabama. Really, really a big shame to see Jamal Shead get hurt after a really spectacular season for those Houston guards.
And they would have beat Duke if he didn't get hurt. I mean, the fact that they lost by 3 showed a lot of fight out of the Cougar squad. But if Shead does not get hurt, I think they're in the Final Four, and I think that's a much different narrative on how the Final Four currently looks, because I think Purdue would have their hands full with Houston in that matchup.
Yeah, I think Duke probably loses by double digits if Jamal Shead doesn't get hurt. I mean, you're talking about the Big 12 Player of the Year and the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if we've ever seen that before. And, yeah, he is really like 80% of their offense. Houston struggles on the offensive end. They're obviously a great defensive team. He is most of their offense. And as soon as he went out, it was like, okay, how are we going to manufacture a bucket? And then they lose. Game was in the 50s or
54, 51, yeah. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that team too. I mean, without him, you just kind of felt the shift in the tide of, all right, now we're looking for our identity when we can't be doing that in a Sweet 16 matchup.
And I think Houston, if they were in this Final Four, that's one of the few teams you say they could beat Purdue. They could beat UConn just because of the way they match up defensively. They trap all the time. They're forcing everybody to the corner, making plays. They probably wouldn't have to really worry about a big man with the way they run around on defense.
Especially with the pick and roll action that Purdue loves. And if Houston's just collapsing on all of those screens, the pressure is going to be on Braden Smith and not Zach Edey. So I would have loved to see that. I think Houston's defense is one of a kind. And if you haven't watched their defense, go back and watch their defense, because it's a sight to see.
All right. Now for the viewers' probable favorite segment. Luke, I'll start with you because I know Elias loves going last. Let me get a timer out. This is our shot clock segment. You get 30 seconds, just like NCAA shot clock, to get off your best take. You ready to go?
Yeah.
And here we go.
All right. Well, we just kind of talked about it, but the UConn-Purdue game, if the fouls dominate it, a lot of people are going to be upset. I really hope it doesn't happen. I think Clingan and Edey, they're going to be physical. They're going to bounce back and forth. Edey's going to get fouls called on. That's fine. But if the free throw percentage is way different, it's going to be really sad. I hope Klingon can stay out of foul trouble against the Player of the Year, and I hope they both have great games because that'll be the best basketball game in the last 100 years.
Possibly got it off there. Possibly got it off. Left your hands, I think, a little bit before that 30 hit. Yeah, we already talked about it a bunch. Yeah, if the refs come out and just slam 2 fouls on one of those 2 in the first 10 minutes of the game, it's probably going to ruin the entire game. I guess I'll go second. Ladislaw's going last.
Good deal.
If they win the championship, UConn is a top 2 team we've seen this past decade. They remind me a lot of Villanova, that 2018 team that was the number 1 overall seed and ran the table. They would be back-to-back champs, 35-3 this year, even with a lot of new faces. You throw some 2015 Kentucky in there possibly, but they didn't even finish the job. This is a team that you could definitely say is the best team stats-wise. I believe they're KenPom 3rd ever in the past, 100 years. One of the best teams ever.
Yeah, I mean, I like that take. I mean, the fact that they did it last year, too, it could be the year of the repeat champion. I mean, we saw the Chiefs do it. I would love for UConn to do it, and then maybe the Nuggets do it. You never know how.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. How about that? Yeah, I think, 2018 Villanova reminds me a lot of this team, just the way they shot a ton of threes, and they were just so efficient and so smart. You never went, wow, that was a dumb shot. That kid just might have lost the game. They put everything together, and this UConn team plays so hard. Watching them against Stetson when it was 15-1 to start the game, I was like, why do they even care this much about a 16 seed? I was like, they could mess around and win this game by 20, and they're always just so locked in. Dan Hurley gets them to play so hard.
All right, I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Let's go.
Your time starts now.
All right, I know I talked about it earlier, but Zach Edey, my friend, you are not the underdog. If you're an underdog, so is Arch Manning. If you're an underdog, so is Bronny James. You have been set up to succeed on that Purdue team since you got there 4 years ago. They've had a history of untalented centers that have performed well in March. You're not the underdog. You're going to be the favorite for the rest of your time in college. Own it.
Early one today. That was only 24 seconds.
Time to spare.
Yes.
That makes up for all his violations in past.
Yeah, that's
All
episodes.
right.
Do you get an extra 6 seconds next time because of that 6 seconds right there?
Please. I'm probably right around that 30 to 31 second mark average for the whole of shot clock.
I probably just got under 30 now.
But what's crazy is I feel like I've got a pretty fast tempo. I talk fast. We don't really get the shot off until right at the buzzer.
Hey, if you have a lot to say, you have a lot to say.
And I normally do.
The people want to hear your take.
It's sort of like a magic 8 ball in my head that's always rolling new things.
You shake it up and you're just like, what's going to come out now?
Yeah, I'm powered by what's it called? One of those hamsters, guinea pigs from G-Force. I got one of those Johns running around on a wheel in my head. Yeah.
Elias gets his whole script off ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I actually wrote ChatGPT.
He just goes through Twitter an hour before the episode. And he's like, what am I going to stir up today and get people angry? Thank you all for tuning in today. That will be our show. Thanks to Josh Bodie for producing. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back Wednesday for the Women's Wednesday edition where they'll talk about the Final Four just like we did. Have a great day, everybody, and God bless.